When I look back at everything I have tried to build, from rockets hurling toward orbit to factories humming with the rhythm of electric motors, I realize there's always been this deeper itch in my mind to construct not just products, but environments, ecosystems, entire habitats where innovation becomes the default mode of living. And that's really what people are noticing when they talk about the expansion of company town concepts and these infrastructure projects near my operations in Texas, especially around the place folks have started calling Snailbrook. The truth is that when I imagine a community, I don't imagine it the way traditional developers do. I imagine a living laboratory that blends work, play, education, and experimentation into one coherent organism. So when we start sketching ideas like a STEM center, where kids can explore engineering the same way other kids explore playgrounds, or a gym where employees and residents can push themselves physically the same way we push boundaries technologically, or public amenities that feel more like the future than the present. It isn't because I want to control anything, it's because I want to remove friction from people's lives so they can aim all of their cognitive bandwidth towards solving big problems. And yes, the idea of building towns may sound strange at first, but step back and look at history. Every major technological leap has been accompanied by places that nurtured it. Whether Silicon Valley sprouting from orchards or the great company towns of the industrial age, except this time the goal isn't to recreate the past, but to reinvent it completely. To build communities driven by sustainability, by affordability, by tight feedback loops between imagination and execution, by the idea that your commute shouldn't drain your energy before you even begin your life's work, and that your environment should inspire you rather than constrain you. So when I think about Snailbrook or any of the other conceptual sites that might appear around our operations, I'm thinking about a blueprint for how humans might live in high-velocity innovation zones, places where a young person can walk from their home to a STEM lab, to a prototype shop, to a rocket engine test stand, and back home in time to watch a sunset over a river or stretch out on the grass while brainstorming a breakthrough idea. And honestly, part of this comes from the same instinct that drove me to obsess over reusable rockets or battery density or autonomous driving. It's about efficiency, elegance, and the belief that the future should feel like progress, not compromise. And yes, there's ambition in all of this, but ambition is only dangerous when it's disconnected from purpose. And the purpose here is to demonstrate that the world we want to live in won't appear unless someone is willing to build it piece by piece, even when it means drawing brand new maps in places where others only see open land. So when people say I'm thinking long-term about these towns and amenities and infrastructure, they're right, because the future doesn't get built by accident, it gets built deliberately. And if I have the ability and the responsibility to push that forward, even in the form of a tiny town with a funny name, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. And as these ideas keep scaling in my mind, I realize that building a community is really no different from building a rocket or a car or a neural interface. You start with a vision that seems absurd, then you break it down into solvable engineering problems. And suddenly what looked impossible becomes inevitable. So when I think about expanding the footprint around Snailbrook or developing new infrastructure near our operations, I'm not thinking in terms of real estate, but in terms of psychological architecture, designing a place where people feel empowered to create at the speed of thought, where the walls of a STEM center aren't just walls, but invitations to curiosity, where the gym isn't just a gym, but a reminder that the body and mind need to be optimized together, where public spaces aren't afterthoughts, but catalysts for conversations that could trigger entire new industries. Because if we're trying to accelerate humanity's trajectory, we need environments that act like accelerators, not anchors. And I keep imagining what happens when a town grows from the inside out rather than the outside in. When instead of people adapting to the limitations of the place adapts to the ambitions of the people. And that's why I'm fascinated by the notion of integrating housing with workshops, studios, labs, and recreation, creating a seamless flow between inspiration and execution. Because a lot of brilliant ideas die in the gap between the moment they appear in someone's mind and the moment they have the tools to act on them. So if you can eliminate that gap, even partially, you change the entire output of human creativity. And yes, I know the phrase company town makes some people nervous, but to me it's not about ownership. It's about enabling a proof of concept for how future settlements, even on Mars, might function. Small, resilient, interconnected systems built around purpose and shared mission. Places where people aren't just renting space, but participating in an experiment in how human civilization can optimize itself. And every time I walk through the dusty ground of these early sites, I picture them decades from now, vibrant, efficient, humming with activity, shaped not by one person's vision, but by thousands of innovators refining it day after day. And I think if we can build rockets that land themselves, cars that drive themselves, neural devices that talk to the brain, why shouldn't we also build communities that inspire themselves? Because ultimately, the environment you live in is one of the most powerful technologies you'll ever interface with. And designing it intentionally is just the next logical step in engineering the future. And the more I push forward with these ideas, the more I see how everything connects, how a town isn't just a town but a prototype for a scalable system of living. And it forces me to think beyond the traditional boundaries of construction or zoning or infrastructure, and instead approach it the way we approach engineering at SpaceX or Tesla. Start with first principles, ask what a human community should be if we weren't limited by legacy assumptions. And that's when things get interesting, because you start asking questions like, what if housing could be built faster and cheaper without sacrificing quality? What if energy in a town wasn't just consumed but produced locally through integrated solar systems? What if transportation inside the town required almost zero friction? What if education wasn't a schedule but a constant, immersive ecosystem? And once those questions pop up, you can't unsee the possibilities. So suddenly, the idea of adding a STEM center or expanding amenities isn't just about making life more convenient, but about creating a blueprint for sustainable living at scale. And honestly, every time I look at the land out there, with the sun baking the earth and that huge Texas sky stretching overhead, I imagine how humanity might someday terraform Mars, starting small, building essential nodes, linking them, creating pockets of opportunity that eventually merge into a thriving colony. And in a weird way, these early terrestrial towns feel like training wheels for that future. Places where we can experiment, iterate, break things, fix them, learn, adapt, and eventually develop a model that could survive not just in Texas, but on a different planet entirely. And I know it sounds grand, maybe overly ambitious, but ambition is only a liability if you're afraid to test it. And I've never believed in holding ambition at arm's length, because every leap we've made, from mass market EVs to orbital reuse, came from refusing to accept the world as fixed. So, when we draft from plans for more housing, or more public spaces, or more community infrastructure, what I'm really drafting is a test case for how society could function when innovation isn't boxed in by outdated systems. And my hope is that people who live in these communities will feel like they're part of something bigger, not in a corporate sense, but in a human sense. Like they're contributing to a long-term experiment and pushing civilization forward. And ultimately, I think that's the real point of all this. Creating places where the future doesn't just get imagined, but actually gets lived, day by day, block by block, until one morning someone wakes up and realizes we're no longer predicting the future, because we're already inside it.